Star Trek has a long history with visual effects, from The Cage to Section 31. For this video, visual effects include physical filming techniques and digital creations. Star Trek featured, at one time, the longest visual effect put to film, as well as featuring one of the first computer-generated sequences in cinema. The franchise often works with limited budgets to produce high-quality set pieces. While the film franchise, generally, with some exceptions, has a bit more to play with, the television side of Trek must turn scraps into stars. Though times have changed and the streaming era has brought more money and advancements in CGI to the fore, Trek has consistently proven that it can do a lot with a little. This has allowed some of the oldest iterations to age well, while some other properties have flagged a little in the years that have passed. It's not a competition, but Star Trek has surely earned its spot in the pantheon of beautiful VFX scenes, as these examples will prove. I'm Sean Frederick for TrekCulture, and here are the 10 best uses of special effects in Star Trek. Number 10. Clouds, planets, and reflective rings. The opening credit sequence for Star Trek Voyager was designed by veteran Trek alum Dan Curry and realised by a large team that included David Stipes, Ron B. Moore, Image G, and the Post Group, while taking inspiration from Santa Barbara Studios' hypothetical solar system tour. The sequence is a combination of CGI and filming models, depending on how close and detailed the ship needed to be in the shot. For the close-ups, the filming model was used to show the minutiae of the USS Voyager, while for wide shots the CGI model was used, the first time a CGI shot of a hero ship had been used in such a fashion in Star Trek. The reflection of the ship in the rings was a combination of filming models and CGI, while the planet Voyager passes at the end was painted onto card. The flaming cloud in the beginning of the sequence almost didn't make the final edit, as Rick Berman wasn't convinced that it worked. Thankfully, other voices spoke up for its defense. Number 9. Welcome home, Enterprise. Almost everything about Spacedock was time-consuming and exhaustive, but effects supervisor Kenneth Ralston was very satisfied, with one notable exception, with the outcome in Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. The interior of Spacedock was constructed with about 20 feet in diameter. Those giant space doors, in reality built in miniature, were fully functioning. To achieve the effect of lights shining through thousands of windows, the entire filming model was constructed from perspex, then small sections were scratched clear. Neon blue lights were shone from the inside. The lounge that features on both the Enterprise's return and departure was a full set built in front of the then largest blue screen in the world. Half of the window frames were constructed, while the rest were filled in via a matte painting. Overall, Spacedock remains one of the most visually striking models and overall effects in the franchise. Ralston was frustrated when, while attending a screening, he noticed there was a pea soup green hue on some of the interiors, despite several arguments with the art department on the colour he wanted the shots to contain. He calmed down when he saw that his colleagues were more than happy with the overall result. Number 8. The beginning of the end for the Klingons. For the opening explosion in Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, ILM returned to Trek, having been unavailable for the previous film. With their absence keenly felt, the next film announced their footprint in a big way. The Praxis explosion has since gone on to become a popular effect in science fiction. Director Nicholas Meyer was inspired by the Poseidon adventure when crafting the wave. The initial explosion was created with a simulated lens flare, a phrase that has triggered many audience members of Star Trek 09, and 2 expanding discs. These were then color-corrected by graphics supervisor Jay Riddle. Creating the wave element that hits the Excelsior required a scale, as this thing needed to slam the ship like a toy. Footage of the physical model of the Excelsior was added to the wave in post-production, while the wave itself featured textures and elements that changed from frame to frame. Though the scene is brief, it has become one of the most memorable moments in Star Trek's history. Number 7. As beautiful as crystal. The Crystalline Entity was a burden in 1987 that reared its head again when the Next Generation was being remastered. The original effect was created by the Post Group, a VFX company based in LA. For the entity's introduction in data lore, the results were mixed. Ronald B. Moore recalled that when the episode aired, he was told that painting a tumbleweed white and shooting that would have achieved the same result as the final edit. However, when the entity returns in Silicon Avatar, the effects were updated slightly. The biggest jump came from the remaster, due to the necessity of completely rebuilding it. The 3D files had long since been lost for the original, so it was built from scratch by CBS digital artist Neil Ray, with the result being, in Mike Okuda's opinion, more beautiful than ever. Number 6. Model kits, explosions, and glitter bombs. For Deep Space Nine's 4th season opener, The Way of the Warrior, the VFX team were tasked with depicting the Klingons going nuts. They achieved this with a combination of Playmates toys, digital trickery, and a lot of glitter. Visual effects coordinator Judy Elkins set about sourcing enough commercially available models of Klingon ships to create the fleet effect. This was a combination of the aforementioned toys, along with model kits and Hallmark Christmas decorations. According to the Star Trek Deep Space Nine companion, the effects department often worked with Paramount's licensing department. The former would loan blueprints to the latter so that the toys etc. would be accurate, while the latter would then provide the former with examples for use. This symbiosis worked to great effect on this episode. One effect that didn't make it into the final edit was an extension of a photon torpedo POV shot, one that originally included said torpedo in the launching tube. It was deemed a little too much for the episode, though the result more than made up for its absence. Number 5. Prepare for ramming speed. Like Star Trek Insurrection before it, Star Trek Nemesis contained primarily digital effects, contributed by Digital Domain, though some key scenes were realised with a combination of digital and practical methods. To achieve the collision scene near the film's climax, Digital Domain had to create a new version of the Enterprise E, one separate from those used in First Contact and Insurrection. For the collision, a 17-foot-long section of the Enterprise E's saucer was constructed, as was an equally enlarged portion of the scimitar. The Enterprise was mounted on a dolly rig and then crashed into the Riemann vessel at about 20 miles per hour, filmed upside down so that the debris would float in space. Once the practical effect was captured, Digital Domain painted additional debris and miniatures into the scene. Lighting played a key element, so the models were flooded with additional light to capture everything. This footage was then combined with the photorealistic work done by the company to seamlessly blend everything back together. For its faults, Star Trek Nemesis looks great, even now more than 20 years later. Number 4. Give a girl a chance, Captain. It takes a lot of effort. Martia was the first Cameloid introduced in Star Trek, appearing to save Kirk and McCoy from their icy prison on Rora Penthe. Her transformations featured some of the earliest morphing work in cinema, while simultaneously proving that sometimes less is more. Films like Willow and Terminator 2 Judgment Day had employed morphing to great effect, but for The Undiscovered Country, computer graphics animator John Burton wanted to push things a bit further. He envisioned a version of the morph that would adapt to a moving camera, adding a new level of trickery to the scenes. For Martia's switch between her large alien form and the small girl, as well as her speaking switch between Iman and William Shatner, the shots had to be painstakingly aligned to allow the scene to flow perfectly. The end result was a simple to the eye, yet extremely complicated effect that looks just as fresh more than 30 years later. Number 3. The Battle of Wolf 359 and all the parts we didn't see. Star Trek Deep Space Nine opens with a bang, as per the intention of Michael Piller. He included the Battle of Wolf 359, tying this new show into greater Trek lore, and also bringing back his own earlier work on the Best of Both Worlds. Visual effects supervisor Robert Legato was given a warning to craft this battle before the rest of the pilot went into production. He envisaged a frenetic scene based on the wreckage that the Enterprise had discovered. He filled the sequence with said wreckage, taking great care to ensure that the hull registry matched the names spoken aloud in the Best of Both Worlds Part 2. After having done this, he was then informed that the action would begin as the battle started, rather than his idea of depicting a battle halfway through. After having put all of that in, he had to go back through the sequence and take a lot back out again. In the Star Trek Deep Space Nine companion, he put it simply, it was a heartbreaker. Still, the prologue did exactly what it set out to do, including exploding the USS Saratoga at Paramount Sound Stages, allowing the new series to begin with that bang they wanted. And if it helps him at all, when the Borg returned in Star Trek First Contact, the Battle of Sector 001 was joined midway, but more on that in another list. Number 2. Crafting the Genesis Wave. The Genesis Wave from Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan represented the first use of particle effects in a motion picture. Though viewing the film in the 2020s may result in the scene feeling a bit dated, in 1982 this was cutting-edge computer graphics never before seen. The effect was created by Industrial Light and Magic, using varying particle patterns for their wall of fire. Though similar in appearance, each particle pattern varied, albeit based on the preceding one. Most of the particles were predominantly red, though with a touch of green. There were greater clusters, the red was dialed up, giving an almost orange glow at the centre of the explosion. The particle effect was created with technology that couldn't handle transferring a light glow onto the surrounding terrain, so this was added to the overall effect afterwards by Lucasfilm team member Tom Duff. An enormous amount of work went into what is a quick scene, though one that has an enduring popularity among Trek fans. Number 1. The New Enterprise. Creating the Enterprise for Star Trek the Motion Picture was a painstaking labour of love, including total redesigns of Matt Jeffrey's original sketches. The update for the ship planned for Phase 2 was adapted to suit the big screen by Richard Taylor and Andrew Probert, along with Doug Trumbull and Harold Michelson. The dry dock sequence is one of the most impressive scenes in Trek's history, even if it is as self-indulgent as these things come, and believe me, that's not a criticism. You know I'm on record stating that this is my favourite scene in the franchise. For the motion picture, the ship wasn't filmed in front of a traditional blue screen, as had been done for the original series. This was to avoid the chance of blue spill, a process by which the reflective model could show the background, thus losing chunks of that model on camera. The studio model of the Enterprise was self-lighting, avoiding that block illumination that often led to the aforementioned issue. The entire sequence is a combination of physical models, compositing, projection, and a gorgeous score from Jerry Goldsmith to send the whole thing off with grace. That is everything for our list today, folks. Thank you so much for watching along. Which of these 10 moments were your favourite to watch, and which do you believe belong in another list, like that Battle of Sector 001? Let us know in the comments below. You can follow us in the various socials at TrekCulture. I am at Sean Ferrick. Until I see you again, look after yourself, and you know what? You're just as pretty as any VFX scene that we've seen in Star Trek. Live long and prosper. Thanks very much.